Good evening. Today is Wednesday, December 18th, 2024 at 6 p.m. We are in the Brecksville Broadview Heights Education Center, 6638 Mill Road, Brecksville, Ohio, 44141. This is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is time for public participation during the meeting as an indicated agenda item. This meeting will be live streamed via YouTube and will also be recorded for later viewing. Please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel where all recordings are posted. Item 1B, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1C, roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer, Ms. Wajkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Mara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes. Moving on to item 2, President's announcements. Just a brief one. I just want to wish everyone a blessed holiday and a happy new year and a safe new year. Moving on to item 3, board appointed reports, Cuyahoga Valley Career Center. I reached out to Rachel and she was not able to make it. She's getting over some type of illness. She did pass along this update. The only update I have for you is that we are looking into the career specialist position within each district. We are considering taking these positions to full time. I just wanted to highlight the career specialists are the liaison between CVCC and each district. They plan events for K through 12 grades to showcase and inspire career tech professionals. Each district is able to direct these specialists to fit the needs of their specific district. I just wanted to highlight that. So that's the update on CVCC, OSBA legislative liaison. Ellen?
So there's actually been a lot going on this week. I don't know, there was some activity today. I didn't have time to look at what happened, so I'm gonna push that off to the January meeting. I don't even know if they passed the law today. There was a law passed and signed by Governor DeWine the day before Thanksgiving, which is called the Protect All Students Act. It's going to restrict student use of bathrooms, locker rooms, changing rooms, and overnight accommodations, and it prohibits schools and students from considering an individual's psychological, chosen, or subjective experience of gender when determining proper access to bathrooms and other private facility spaces. There's a lot to this law. It does not take effect until February 25th. And as it currently stands, it's highly possible that there may be a lawsuit filed contesting it. And it also currently conflicts with federal law. So even though it's passed, whether or not it actually starts being implemented February 25th is very much up in the air. So to be continued.
Okay, very good. Moving on to item 4, superintendent committee reports. Financial liaison audit committee is myself and Tish. The audit is
Almost
in progress, almost done.
I actually just got an email yesterday asking a bunch of questions. I submitted all that stuff to them today. So we are in the final stretch of the regular financial audit. GAP is done. That was done at the end of November. So the GAP conversion piece is done. So now they're basically, financial audit is testing the GAP financials, and we're hopefully in the home stretch here in the next couple weeks. But with the holiday, I'm guessing it's not going to be till January, even though I would like it to be done before.
Okay, very good. Permanent Improvement Committee, Ava and myself, we had a big update last week or last meeting. And I see later on the agenda, the board will be considering a motion to go out for bid for middle school roofing. So there's some PI coming up later in the meeting. Anything else? No? Okay. Board Policy Committee, Ellen and Lisa.
There's just, there's all the policies from last time that are on for final reading this time. And then we just have one additional policy that was sort of like a late add from Mila that's on for a first reading. You know, if you want to add anything about. Okay. Okay.
Right. Okay, Transportation Appeals Committee, myself, we have had no appeals. Hopefully that string continues. Safety and Security Meeting, Ava and Ellen. Okay, School Foundation Report, Tish.
Yes, the school's foundation is still looking for a treasurer to serve for the school's foundation. They have been advertising, so if there's anyone that is looking to serve the community, this is a great organization that is raising, money for our teachers and for our students to do great programming in our buildings and for our kids. So anybody that has a financial background or might be interested, please reach out to the Schools Foundation. They can be found on Facebook and on the web, or feel free to reach out to me as well, and I will pass along your interest. And then they are heavily in the throes for finalizing all of the details for their annual fundraiser that will be held on the February 20th at Michelangelo's Winery. It is a toast to our future. Tickets will go live on the 6th of January. So be on the lookout for that to make your purchases. We would love to see everybody there. That's it.
Just real quick, what do you have any sense of the responsibilities of the treasurer, like what type of commitment it would be?
If you want to wait a
Well.
second, I can give. I'm not exactly sure how long how long you can serve for, if there's a term, so to speak. But it is really reviewing their financials, keeping their databases, managing the ins and outs of the dollars coming in and going out for the teacher grants and then the scholarships that are provided to our students. So yes, they are a nonprofit and they do file. So you would be looking at that.
The treasurer doesn't file the taxes though, right? They probably have an accountant they work with.
They are working with an accountant, but yes, they provide all the information to the accountant and work with the accountant.
Okay, very good. Sustainability Committee, Ellen and Ava.
I know that there was an announcement about what two more areas for the Rust Belt Riders receptacles that were added.
Yeah, just here at the board office in the elementary building. And I point out on our tour today, Ellen noticed a couple sustainability initiatives at the elementary building. They have boxes out for markers and all that type of stuff that could be recycled. So, yeah.
That's right.
That's our greenest building. Let's put it that way.
Always has been.
Good. PSO report, Lisa.
The PSO meeting in December was canceled because it coincided with our snow day. So we didn't have a meeting, but I do have a couple notes. So I'll just mention that at all the different buildings, the PSOs are working on their gifts and goals purchases. So at the high school, they're doing quite a few gifts and goals requests for the staff. I think those have all been approved and they're being purchased. The same thing, the middle school has formed a committee and they're meeting with Mr. Rings. They also are gifting $300 in scholastic dollars to 9 teachers. And then at the elementary school, their committee met and they approved over $20,000 of items. And that was 256 requests were approved. And then they also were able to fulfill an additional $3,100 in requests through a community Amazon wish list. So thank you to our community for being so generous and being able to fund those programs. It really makes a difference for our staff and students.
It's absolutely unbelievable.
And there won't be a January meeting of PSO Council, so I probably won't have a report then. So they'll meet again in February, beginning of February.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 5, superintendent's announcements. Jeff?
Just a couple quick ones. If you remember last meeting, we had some friends from the HOA visit us about our possible improvements to our campus. I'm happy to report that we met this afternoon with the architect, some civil engineer, and those same members just to put them at ease as to the improvements and how it may or may not affect their development. So that partnership continues to head in the right direction and is very positive. So they were very appreciative of being privy to a lot of the information, and I think a lot of education happened today. And the one thing that the architects did share with the HOA is if we do put a baseball and softball field down there, that it would benefit their neighborhood if we put turf in, because turf actually holds much of the water in the aggregate. So it actually would cut down on the runoff. So being the superintendent and the person selling it, I thought, I have to put that on the fact sheet of how it will benefit the HOA down there. But no, it was a good meeting. They appreciate to be in the loop. Community-wide email went out this afternoon. I'm sure some of you've seen that. So just updates from around the district this time of year, a lot of holiday cheer, and a lot of great things. NHS induction ceremony was last week where we had many students recognized for academic performance. And our students are out and about. Yesterday we had carolers stop by. That same busload of carolers went to Heinen's and a couple of senior homes in town. Some of the band members made their way over to one of the fire stations. So our students have been blessing our community with their many, many talents. So a big thank you to not only those students, but also the teachers and our music department for the extra time and effort that they're putting in to just make it a joyous time of year. After the meeting tonight, I'll be stopping at the elementary on the way home to catch the second half of their performance tonight. So it goes from like 6 to 8:30 or 9 o'clock, like 2 shifts of it. So I'm going to try to catch that second half one. So lots going on in the district. Things are great, but at the same time, we always joke we have to earn our break. So it's always an interesting time around a school building as you get closer and closer to any of the breaks that we have. And last reminder, tomorrow is our second coffee chat. It will be at Panera in Brecksville tomorrow morning. Craig and I from 9 to 10. Last month we were at the coffee club in Broadview Heights. I think it was well attended by 12 to 15. Ava, thanks for being there as well. So I think tomorrow might be a bigger crowd from what I'm hearing. I'm hearing lots of people mentioning they're going to stop by. So looking forward to it. It's a great conversation. It's a great way to connect with our community, especially a segment of our community that we don't always have a direct line to. So looking forward to it. Of course, I don't know if we planned them very well. Craig and I talked about that we always do it the morning after a board meeting. So, but that's okay. We'll be all right. We'll survive. We'll have lots of coffee. So, and I'm going to say this probably every meeting as these policies are approved. And if they're approved tonight, our kindergarten registration is moving from the end of September to August 1st. That obviously is going to affect some families in our community. So I'm just going to continue to announce that probably at every meeting. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Moving on to item 6, treasurer's announcements. Craig?
I don't have much to share. I think we're trying to kind of just get through the lame duck session. We keep getting all these alerts and things. Some of it doesn't necessarily always relate to funding, but ultimately there's a lot of unknowns and some hidden dollars that'll potentially come out of these. So we're just trying to watch those. So we get the alerts from OSBA and OASBO. I'm sure Jeff gets them from VASA. So that's kind of what we're focusing on right now. We are trying a little bit of a different approach with our departments this year. So Jeff and I are going to have some pre-budget meetings, especially as we're heading towards deficit spending. So we're going to be working on some of those pre-budget meetings to start to get deeper and deeper into the budgeting process with our departments and buildings. So that's coming up in January and February. So getting very ahead of it and getting very early into that process. And then we'll do budget meetings in February, March. And then we should be in hopefully some good spots as we head towards the final budgeting season, which is like a really May, June, before we close out the fiscal year. So that's a little bit new for this year, but that's something that we're working on together. That's it.
All right, thanks. Moving on to item 7, community communications. Item A, hearing the public. Do we have anybody who wishes to be heard this evening? No. Okay, so we're going to skip the reading and we're going to move on to item 8, other board business. Item A, new board policy first reading. This is just informational, but do we want to have some conversation about what this is?
Yeah, it's part of that time of year, I guess. It's not part of lame deck, but this was passed in the summer, this law, but the governor did not sign it until October 24th, which he signed it after Neola put out the fall update or what used to be the August update. So that's why it's coming now kind of out of sequence or by itself. And it is law that just stipulates that a school district must have a policy on the following, which is in here. It doesn't really change what we do or how we do it. But, you know, there's no teeth to it that says what happens if you don't do it, but to follow the legislation is to have a policy. So, again, I don't see it changing our day-to-day operations at all, but it is something that our legislators felt as though we needed to have. So it's very ambiguous.
Yes.
So a Christmas gift.
Yes.
Okay.
And most school districts right now are doing this right now. Like, I know we know some people at Stowe and they had their meeting. My friends at Medina are watching their meeting, because that's what we do on our free times, watch other people's board meetings. And everybody has this policy up for read and approval. Our second reading is actually on the 22nd, I believe, is when our January meeting is, so we can get it in just in time. But even if we didn't, if we were to delay it for whatever reason, there's no necessarily a penalty.
Okay.
Doesn't matter if there's a spelling error.
In the, I'll change the spelling error if it's in the policy.
Okay, the ideology is spelled.
It is spelled wrong. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Right there.
We'll make sure that's correct. That's just, yeah, thank you for catching it.
I'm glad she said something. I saw it twice and was like,
It is one of those.
Yeah. And just because I've been looking at it since
it came out.
Jeff sent it to us last week, I'm not even really sure
What
if
it's,
we didn't pass it, what would happen. It just is a very vague, ambiguous policy / law. So anyway, for what it's worth.
Things are getting a little silly right now, this time of year, lame duck session, and then just with trying to legislate everything right now. So it's ongoing at the moment.
Okay, we're going to move on to item B. Resolve to adopt new revised board policies, final reading. May I have a motion?
so moved.
And
Comments?
My kindergarten registration date, reminds me.
Yeah, and these were all policies that we had a first reading on and we had some discussion on. So this is just the second reading, which is the final reading, which will enact them should the board vote in favor of them.
Not much of it isn't changing business as we do it now. A lot of it is different verbiage is being used, just some updates with some of the laws that were passed, but nothing controversial or out of the ordinary. It's pretty boilerplate policy update, in my opinion, except kindergarten registration date.
Right. Any comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
yes,
Ms. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen,
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item D. Resolve to approve administrative guideline revisions as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
second,
And this is super simple. It goes to show you how common those policies were. These administrative guidelines that go along with policy updates. Much of this has to do with grant funding and changes. So there isn't really a whole lot of changes. One of them is being rescinded because we no longer have that policy at 5136. So these only require one read. Administrative guidelines are just a one read, not like policy where it's two.
Any comments or questions?
I just think for clarity, like, while we're rescinding the cellular telephones and electronic communication devices, we do have policy on cell phone use in our schools. And that's been a hot topic since the summer when the state has required that, but we do have that.
And just to recap, administrative guidelines
Right.
applies to our administrative staff.
How we implement
we
policy.
implement the policy.
Okay.
So it's hold us accountable and how it should be the steps we take to institute policy.
And I had received emails asking about it. I know we do have cell phone policies
Yeah.
for that.
Okay. Very good. Any other comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
yes,
Mrs. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen,
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item F, resolve to appoint Mark Dosen as president pro tem for the January 8th, 2025 organizational meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
second,
Any comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
yes,
Ms. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosom?
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item 9, superintendent's other business. Item A, resolve to approve the FY 25 funds for CTE partnership proposal as attached. Item B, resolve to approve the 2025-2026 high school course options catalog revisions as attached. Item C, resolve to authorize advertisement of bid specifications for middle school roof replacement section 05 locker rooms, 15 staff entrance overhang, 20 auditorium lobby, and 27 stage and roof patches. Item D, resolve to approve the middle school 8th grade trip to Washington, DC as attached. Item E, resolve to approve the high school marching band trip to Orlando, Florida as attached. Item F, resolve to approve superintendent's other business items A through E. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
CT partnership proposal, this is a yearly thing. It's a roughly $30,000 of funds that we receive from CVCC that can be used throughout our district. This is being used on a printer at the middle school as well as photography, professional development for a photography class. So it's kind of a yearly thing. Our high school course options catalog revisions. The high school does a very nice job. They give you a cheat sheet with all the revisions that they're making. This is coming now because when we get back from break, we are on to the 25-26 school year. Scheduling process will start. The building and the master schedule will start. So in our world, we're already prepping for the following school year. One thing I do want to point out in here, and I shared it with you in the update, was the new curriculum frameworks. There's quite a few examples in here of the curriculum frameworks. If you remember, a few months back, I talked about this being part of the strategic plan, but also something that we began working on when I was hired. It's a public-facing document that is accessible to our community as to what is taught, what resources are used, how the students are assessed. So, you know, when people come asking, well, what are you teaching in that social studies class or that AP or art class, this is the document that I would point people to. So the work that is done for this comes from the curriculum department, but more importantly from the teacher who teaches the course. In here, we have our philosophy as a district for instruction and curricular matters. We have the strategic plan with our values and our beliefs, our attributes of a B, and then you get into the meat of it. The description of the course, kind of a scope and sequence, what resources are used. These documents are meant to be a living document. So during professional development opportunities throughout the district, teachers will be directed back to it to make sure that it's updated and ongoing. Especially when you do adoptions, curriculum frameworks will be a big part of the adoption process, because as you change resources or update curriculum, these documents will need to be updated. At the January meeting, Dr. Martin will be here and he will show you more of them. We have them done for basically grades 6 through 12, every course that's offered in the district. Our elementary staff is busy doing other stuff right now, and curriculum frameworks are not a priority there. But we do have grades 6 through 12 completed, and he will share a little bit more of them next month. So I just wanted to point those out. Bid authorization, we're finishing up our roofs. Once we finish these up, we've obviously elementary is in good shape. The high school has been completed, and now the middle school will be completed. So that'll be a permanent improvement item that we can maybe focus our energies in other areas of the district, since we should be good for quite a few years on roofing. It's closer? I thought it was super close. How far off am I? Okay, all right. Maybe I was wishful thinking then.
Two more projects?
Two?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'll rephrase. I stand corrected. Thank you, gentlemen. The Washington DC trip for 8th graders on here for approval, and the band trip. The band trip attachment is not there. As I explained in our update, there's some sensitive information in that update that we want the band instructors to announce to the students and parents. So once that's done, we will add the attachment to this, but this is their traditional trip that they go on. Other than that, I think that's all of my items.
Any comments or questions?
I have a question and a comment. My question is for the CTE partnership. I think that you've already said this, but this is typically what when we get these funds, this is what we use them for.
Yeah, traditionally it's been used for like the Fab Lab at the high school. So we're showing a little bit of love to the middle school this year and some of the STEM projects that they do.
And the reason that I'm asking that is I know that some of our vision and strategic planning and some of your goals is
Mhm.
to look at expanding our CTE
Yes,
focus in the
Mhm.
district. And this might come into play
correct.
down the road.
Yep, and it was going to, and I investigated it, but then Rachel's update talking about our career specialist. Our career specialist, so you know by name, is Randy Borosh. That's who works for the CBCC, but is stationed in our district to do whatever we assign her to do, career specialty wise. She is a true asset to our district, and she and those positions are being considered. I don't know if it's official yet, but it's on the verge of being official. Moved to full time. So we'll have more hours, and she will be heavily involved in some of our career exploration programming that we're hoping to roll out over the next 3 years in the strategic plan.
I actually had a question similar to Tish's, and I'm just wondering how you decide which of these choices to make for the CTE funds.
Well, like I said, of late, it's been used in the Fab Lab at the high school because down in the basement with Craig Kowach and Ryan Gabo, a lot of their equipment, the foundation has been very generous over the years, but there's a lot of materials that go along with the 3D printers and the engravers and all that. So a lot of the funds that we got from CTE have been invested into that lab because it is a career technical offerings that they have, even though it's not officially categorized as CTE yet. And so that's where Dr. Martin and the curriculum department have used these funds for. We have quite a bit of latitude with it, but that's kind of where it's been directed of late.
And then my comment just is about the curriculum frameworks and reviewing them. And I know I reached out to you this week.
Yeah.
That is an immense amount of work. And I think that they are fantastic. And I love that the district is going to be able to have that forward facing resource. It helps us as a board, be able to refer the community to that when there are questions about instruction in our classrooms. And I just want to give a kudos to our instructional staff and to Dr. Martin for this work because it's great work and they did a great job.
Yeah, the teachers have done a great job with it. We so appreciate it. It also helps, especially when you have course offerings that are taught by multiple people, for them to collaborate to make sure that we're all on the same page in what's being offered, so that there's some equity across the curriculum. And it's going to be forced upon us sooner or later to do this, because if you follow other states, the state of Florida, for example, they're forced to produce documents like this. So we wanted to get ahead of the game. We've always had curriculum maps that has a lot of the same information, but that's for us nerd educators that want to really go deep with standards and everything else. These are just documents that are more accessible. So thank you, but the staff deserves credit for that.
I know you said Dr. Martin's going to talk about it next month, but for grade 6 through 12, when will all the documents go live, like so people can see them?
Our goal or our accountability chart in our strategic plan was January 6th. So actually, when we come to the meeting in January, which is January 22nd, they'll already be live. So
That's exciting.
yeah.
Other comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Galick,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Whitekowski,
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Ms. Rudosa.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item 10. Superintendent's personnel recommendations. Item A, resolve to approve certified personnel recommendations. Item B, resolve to approve classified personnel recommendations. Item C, resolve to approve superintendent's consent items A to B. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So on here, just some common things: AP coordinator, a mentor, some credentialing, but one in particular I want to point out is intervention specialist Emma Hughes. Emma Hughes did her student teaching with us here in the fall and is a recent graduate who is going to fill a very important opening for us. So we will, it's one of the reasons you do and host student teachers is you can kind of give them a test run and help train them up. Here, Emma just happened to find herself in a position where we have an opening that we need filled for the rest of the school year. So we will be employing her as a long-term substitute. And she's kind of floating in between licenses right now, because as student teaching, they have like a pre-employment license and then she gets a license. But now we're in that wait time between her getting her transcript and applying for a license. So she's fully credentialed. She'll check all the boxes for us, but we are in a little bit of transition with licensure with her. So we're happy to welcome her aboard. We have retirement. We have two on here, Nancy Reeves and Sue Yeager. I just one quick note about Nancy. Nancy is one of three generations. Her mother taught in our district. She obviously has taught in our district for 30 plus years, and her daughter is also a teacher in our district. So three generations from that family have educated students here. We actually, Ellen and I had an opportunity to speak with her today as we toured the elementary building, and she's looking forward to spending time with her grandchildren. So we thank both of these individuals for their many years of dedication to not only our district, but more importantly, our students. And then some unpaid leave requests that come from time to time, special events or things that people need to take an unpaid leave for. On the classified side, nothing too crazy. We were able to fill the position of mechanic to bring us back fully staffed there. Careful when I say that, because usually when I say fully staffed, then next day it changes.
Any comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara.
Yes.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item 10E, supplemental recommendations. Resolved to approve supplemental personnel recommendations. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Take it these are just standard.
Yep, standard finishing off for the winter season. We do have quite a few volunteers. As always, I do want to thank those volunteers for stepping in. People usually ask, why do we have so many volunteers in wrestling? When you're a nationally ranked program, people want to be helpful. And so we have quite a few volunteers helping out.
And our volunteers have to go through all the same steps as the
Yep.
coach, correct?
Yep. They don't make it on here unless they have passed all those items. Background check, even fraud training these days.
Any comments or questions?
Oh,
Well-
I actually have a
Sure.
question. This is more, because I've gotten questions from constituents. These seasons have already started,
Mhm.
and then we're voting on them now. I think we've explained a little bit about that, but could you expand on why that is? Sometimes we're voting after the season has already started.
Yeah, board policy allows me to hire prior to board approval. It's not something that we typically do a lot, but it does happen. So we are still within policy. Many of times these individuals are waiting on licenses to arrive and or fingerprints to come in, or fraud training is new and we had certificates. So ideally we would like to have them on and approved before the season starts, but sometimes with the amount of information we have to collect and waiting on the state to turn things around, they happen at this time. So I asked the same question when I opened the spreadsheet.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelic,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, item passes 5-0. Moving on to item 11, treasurer's consent agenda. Item A, resolve to approve the financial reports as attached. Item B, resolve to authorize the treasurer CFO of the Brecksville-Brawley Heights City School District to request the county auditor to advance taxes from the proceeds of the tax levies pursuant to section 321.340 of the Ohio Revised Code to meet current expenses as needed during the period of January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. Item C, resolve to approve the budget adjustments to expenditures and revenues and for the treasurer to update the appropriations and certificate of estimated resources with the county auditor's office as attached. Item D, resolve to accept donations as presented. Item E, resolve to approve the minutes from the November 20th, 2024 regular board meeting as attached. Item F, resolve to approve treasurer's consent. Items A through E. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Craig, you're up.
Well, because we're going so quickly tonight, I think we do have time to read the check register. If Be a great time.
Could preview it. We could do a Christmas
That's
preview.
why Mr. Cochiola came in, right? Want to read the check register? Okay, so this is for the month of November. Highlighted here, we brought in $657,000 in revenue. The majority of that is basically from state funding and other miscellaneous revenue, which about 160,000 of that is interest. Our expenditures are listed below for a total of $4.4 million, which is $2.9 million in salaries, $1 million in benefits, $350,000 in purchase services. Is that 63? Yeah, 64,000 in supplies. Those are our largest categories, obviously salaries and benefits, as you know. I did update for you all here. This is the November forecast. So these are our most current forecast numbers here in blue. And then our projected kind of just changes throughout the year as we get closer and closer to the end of the fiscal year, as we learn more information and we finish each month. So when we get down to the bottom, we are projected right now to be negative $1 million at the end of the school year. Things kind of go where I'm thinking they're going to go now. We could be negative 600,000. We'll see how the rest of the year goes, depending on where that leads us. When we go down to let's look at comparison from last November to this November. When we look at our revenue comparison, we do have a little bit more revenue this year than we did last year. All revenue categories were slightly higher as we look over here. They increased by $77,000 from the previous year. So then that shows you where we are for forecasted versus projected. So it's pretty close right now on the revenue side. Whoopsies, I go back over here. Whoops, wrong way. When we look at expenditures, we are slightly below where we were last year. When we look at which categories that define all of those, salaries and benefits were higher than they were at the same time period. Most of that was due to the increasing of benefits. It was a larger category for this month at 9.4%. We took on that increase with the consortium for pricing of premiums. And then all other expenditure categories were actually slightly less in supplies and purchase services than they were as compared to last year. That's the summary of where we would be at the end of the fiscal year on June 30th. We'd have a carryover balance of $26 million. And we look at our fiscal year to date, so where we are from July to current. The green was what we brought in last year at this time, and then the blue is where we are. So we're a little bit less. We expect that to kind of catch up a little bit once we head into 2025 with the taxes. For some reason, the shift, they do a split in terms of how the property taxes come in. And oddly enough, we've actually slipped in the first half, but we always make up in the second half. So we get about 45% of our revenues from property taxes in the fall, and then we get about 55-ish% in the spring. So this should balance out a little bit here coming up. And then on expenditures, you can see we are much higher as overall in terms of expenditures in purple, which is July to current, and then where we were last year was in orange.
Why are the expenditures so much higher?
Most of it's due to salaries and benefits. Some of that will probably even out a little bit, but as I shared, actually, January is going to be a large lift because we have 3 pays in January, and we have the large severance payment of about $550,000 from all the retirements that went out last year. So January is going to be pretty rough, but it should all still kind of balance out by the end of the year, just because of timing and whatnot. Plus, it's a little bit higher too because we had that extra $400,000 was just paid out in October for the severance bonus.
But we don't have, it's not, some of that increase really isn't supplies. I mean, are we spending more?
The supplies right now for this year are they're projected to be about $100,000 more than last year, is where we are in supplies. Purchase services are where we are probably the most. Did you see what she was looking at? No, but I mean, we talked about that. It's like some of it's special ed, it's outplacements, it's the kids that we have to service. And what's best for them. So that has taken a huge hit in purchase services, which is why that is an area that is the highest compared to year to year.
We do have students that have needs that need to be met. And
yeah,
that's understandable. I just didn't know. I knew that we had talked about there was some increase in supplies and the need for supplies.
Yeah. Some of that's handled through the other funds, but even in the general fund side, it's still higher than it. Yeah. The request for tax advances, just to talk about this briefly, it's just that this allows us to get those payments in January and February versus getting all of them in March. So we do this every year. The budget modifications are listed here. So you can see the resource modifications. These are some slight changes we have to this is what we approved back in June. This is where the new estimates are. And then that's the amount of the actual difference between the two columns. So we're requesting that the revenues be increased in these specific categories, which is an increase of $4.8 million or $489,000, sorry, on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, we have a little bit different. We typically, when we do the first appropriations, they are a little bit less than where they are right now. So that's why you see a larger increase in the budget modification, because we try to underdo those in June a little bit before we get more final numbers. But these are the funds that are having modifications to them based on what information we currently have. So as you can see, like the grants we know, so there's not very many modifications to the grant funds that are here. So this is the $467,000. We didn't know what that cost was going to be in June. So now we know what the cost to demo Hilton is. So that's why that fund 070 now has an appropriation for it. So it's a total increase to the budget over what we approved in June of $2.6 million. But again, some of those were underestimated when we did that in June, which is normal. So those are the appropriations for resource modifications. We do have a couple of donations that are here for food service to the lunch program, which was nice, and the Washington DC trip.
Yeah, I know this is very, very light of all the numbers that you just had up there, but I'm just curious why all of a sudden all these donations to the lunch program.
I don't know,
Very
because
generous.
it happened right, I think it was before I left. Did Amy tell you at all? She received some monies, and then she was able to apply them however because there still are, as much as, I mean, this is great because it's helping people with negative lunch balances. But I think for the district, she still has about almost $22,000 or $24,000 that parents have not paid in negative lunch balances.
That's usually why
Yeah.
they have
So
donations.
So yeah, I don't know if I don't think she's had a drive of anything to my knowledge. So she received a donation and then she was able to apply them to negative balances. And then the minutes are the last items. Any other questions?
No questions or comments? Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelick,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yeah.
Ms. Kwiatkowski?
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes. Item passes 5-0. Item 12, closing items. Item A, announcements. The organizational meeting of the Board of Education is scheduled for January 8th, 2025 at 5 p.m. at the Education Center. Yeah, so we'll see you next year. And item B, resolve to adjourn the meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Roll call.
Mrs. Gaelick,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
yes.
Ms. Kwiatkowski?
Yes.
Ms. O'Meara?
Yes.
Mr. Dosen?
Yes, this adjourns our meeting. Again, have a happy and safe holiday and happy New Year.
And same to everyone.